Impact of Influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
Hello, friend. So grateful you're going to spend some time with us again. It's Matt Harris and Seton Tucker, Impact of Influence. Find it on Facebook. And when you're there, you can also get guided to the YouTube channel we've been having rolling over the last month or so. The response has been great. We'd love to see some more subscribers. So if you have a chance, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it. And of course, if you want to ask us questions on that page, we will definitely answer. So appreciate that. Part of the Evergreen podcast company. And seeing we were just talking, it has been
Over three years.
Over
3 years that we've been at this.
And believe it or not, we are still talking Murdaugh, even though he has been convicted of killing Maggie and Paul. There are still things happening, either Murdaugh, actually Alec Murdaugh, or things Murdaugh adjacent or related. What are we doing today?
Okay, I want to start off talking about the new owner of Moselle, who has recently come forward. There was an article in Realtor.com, and the new owner of Moselle is, I think it's Alex. It's Alexander. So I don't know if he goes by Alec or Alexander. I did speak with him on the phone.
Another Alex.
Yes, and he's from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and he bought the 4-bedroom home of Alec and Maggie Murdaugh for $1 million in an auction in February of 2024. Now, the 1,700-acre property had already been purchased by owners of neighboring farms.
So that's a lot of the land.
Right. So this purchase was actually the home, the kennels, the hangar, and 21 acres.
Okay. Still pretty good size.
Yeah. So I spoke to Blair, and he told me that it has been absolutely crazy since this article came out.
I'm sure.
He's going to do an interview with Fox and hopefully speak to us after that interview.
That'd be great.
He confirmed that he is renovating the house. He tore down the kennels, and he rebuilt the hangar. And the property is going to be used as a second home retreat, and it's going to look much different than the pictures that we've seen, during the course of the murder trial.
And for those who don't know, Rock Hill to Moselle, we've driven that ride. So what's that, a couple hours? Maybe not even that.
Yeah.
About a couple. 2 hours.
Definitely doable for a weekend.
Yeah.
So Blair is the founder of this company called Resto Pros.
Resto Pros, yes.
Yes. And what they do is they help businesses and homeowners after they've had some sort of water damage, fire, mold, smoke, storm damage. I know I've seen those trucks around my neighborhood with those PEX pipes. And he told me that he started the company in 2018 with $7,000.
Wow, totally started his own business, made his own way, self-made.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hardworking guy.
Okay, so this article that came out in Realtor.com indicates that Blair did not think Murdaugh killed his wife and son.
Which is weird that's coming out in Realtor.com, right?
I know, it was weird. And there were a couple of other articles. I think there was one in Daily Mail and one New York
But they were
Post.
kind of repeating the Realtor story. Yeah.
Right. And that he is in possession of the kennel door and windows. Remember, he tore those down. That have some bullet holes. And this article says that they clear Murdaugh. This evidence clears Murdaugh of the killings of...
That's what he believes.
Right. And basically that, I guess the trajectory of the bullets, I'm not a gun person. I mean, I do sometimes shoot skeet, but that's about it. I'm not a hunter. But that Murdaugh was too big or too tall to have shot Paul.
Well, the theory that we heard from Aimee, the juror, the other day, is that he was falling when he shot.
Yes.
So he would have shot not at his height.
Right. That's what she said. I'd struggle to understand all those reenactments. I would love to have Kenny Kinsey on and break it down for us, and maybe somebody else. I saw something interesting online someone sent me. But anyway, I'm not sure if that is a complete, accurate assessment of what Mr. Blair said. So I'm hoping he will come on our podcast and tell us his thoughts.
Because whatever was reported in Realtor might not, or it might have been out of context, or not exactly what he was saying, is what you're saying.
Yes, he says he wants
to clarify that.
He wants to do this interview with Fox and clear up some of the misperceptions that may have come about by this article.
Okay. And then hopefully we'll have them because we've got some questions. Yeah.
And there are a few other things in this article which I found interesting. It says that Blair seeks to change the narrative of the home in a positive way. And he also points out that many homes in the Low Country have negative histories.
That's absolutely true. And remember, Maggie and Paul were not killed in the house, right? So that's...
And he tore down the kennels, which,
right.
I mean, I don't blame him. Also, he's in this article, it says that many of the other neighbors didn't think that Alec was necessarily guilty of these murders. I reached out to the Godleys. I found them on Facebook, but they didn't return my message. But that was a long time ago. Maybe I'll try to reach back out.
Yeah. Okay. Now, that's we're going to get back to more Murdaugh stuff in a second, right? But do you want to go to your Uber ride first?
Yeah. So I had the craziest Uber ride this weekend.
This is crazy. This
really,
is nuts.
really interesting. I was texting you, I think, after my husband and I got home from the soccer game in Charlotte. We were texting. I was like, this is the craziest ride, because I had just read this article in the state paper by John Monk titled Why does Alec Murdaugh and others escape the death penalty in South Carolina while Richard Moore doesn't? History of the death penalty in South Carolina is what's come back after.
Yes, there was a debate over lethal injection and that sort of thing, and can you do the firing squad, all that. And so now it's back. I think they've executed 2 or 3.
I don't know. The first one occurred in September.
Right.
So on Friday, I'm in this Uber with my husband coming back from the soccer game, and we strike up a conversation with our Uber driver. And the beginning of the conversation was just kind of silly. I don't even know how we started this. It was like, would you rather wrestle a snake or an alligator? And then we brought sharks into it. I don't know why we were talking about this. But,
all right.
And I really don't know how the conversation took a turn, but somehow it comes out that our driver attended the first execution in South Carolina in September.
Oh, he did the one? Yes, really? He attended it.
He attended it. Now, his mother, her name is Irene Graves, was killed during an armed robbery at a convenience store where she worked as a clerk on Halloween night in 1997. Now, Art was just 18 years old at this time, and he had 2 younger siblings who were 10 and 11. And I guess he was in college, out of state. He came back to South Carolina to help raise his siblings.
Okay.
So I decided to ask him, I said, why did you decide to attend this execution? And he said he just felt like he needed to see it.
I can understand that.
Right.
How long has it been? 30?
It's almost 30 years since the death of his mother. So I really am very sympathetic to families who are victims, and they have to, 30 years. He's been dealing with court proceedings for 30 years.
Constantly hearing about the appeals and whether or not the death penalty is going to happen. The man convicted of killing Artie's mom, Freddie Eugene Owens, died of lethal injection, and he maintained his innocence and did not make any statement prior to his death.
Yeah, so he said, because we see these things on court movies, and the person addresses the family. He said that didn't happen. He was already strapped down.
Okay.
So I read a little bit about the story, and the man who was convicted with him, his name is Stephen Golden, and he issued a statement shortly before the execution. And in his statement, Golden says that he substituted Freddie for the person who was really with me at the Speedway that night.
So he's saying this guy didn't do it?
He's saying he didn't do it. He said, I did I did that because I knew that's what the police wanted me to say, and also because I thought the real shooter or his associates might kill me if I named them to the police.
Jeez.
And he goes on to say, I'm still afraid of that, but Freddie was actually not there. But we should note that Golden avoided the death penalty himself in exchange for his testimony against Freddie Owens.
And he was sentenced to how long? 28 years?
Yep.
So is he out, I guess?
You know what? I don't know. I did not look that up.
More than 30. Yeah, that is insane. And he's saying the guy didn't do it, and they still executed him. But I guess it's just.
And the article I read in USA Today,
I remember reading this.
they had interviewed Art, the son of Irene, and it was before the statement came out from Golden, so they were going to possibly try to contact him again. I did reach out to him, and he was a really very nice driver. One of my best Uber drivers I've ever had.
Yeah, well, he went through some stuff in life. Yeah,
He did, and he still seemed very positive.
working hard. Got it. Yes. All right. So let's see. We're going to move to the reaction to the juror Aimee, who we did with the Zoom call.
Yes, Aimee Williams, and we have had a ton of comments on our Facebook page. This was one of your best interviews.
Yep. Some of these comments are also from the YouTube page.
And spoke to some people, just personal friends who are listeners, and just everyone was really impressed. Great interview, interesting insight on the jury deliberations. I found her to be very believable. You need to bring her back to talk about her nonprofit.
Okay.
But then we had this question too, which again, overall, I think people were really impressed, found her to be believable, genuine. But we had this comment, which I thought was also a good point. Someone pointed out that it's interesting that a victim of domestic violence would be chosen for the jury since Murduagh was tried for the ultimate domestic violence, murdering his wife and child.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also surprised that the brother of the first officer to arrive at the scene was chosen as well.
Right. I remember that. A very big deal at the time.
Small area. So I was able to...
I don't know. We don't know how she filled out the form, or maybe they didn't know, or maybe she did know. I don't know.
Well, I was able to get my hand on a copy of the jury questionnaire. And there was one question that seems to kind of relate to this. Number 28, it says, have you, a family member or a close friend, ever witnessed the commission or been the victim of a violent or non-violent crime other than a minor traffic ticket, or witnessed or been the victim of an act of violence, yes or no? If yes, state who and the nature of the crime.
Again, we don't know what she filled out, though. Those are the secret.
Right. And at first I said, well, maybe she was questioned, but I was able to confirm that the only person actually brought back into judge's chambers to have a conversation was the brother of the first responder.
Mm-hmm. So, again,
we don't know how she responded. Someone
right.
said maybe we could find out. So we will try to look into that.
And she told us about recusing herself from a jury previously.
Right, because she's a victim of domestic violence and a victim of rape. So we don't know what happened. Maybe the defense felt that she could get over it.
Or could be.
They just missed it. Maybe she responded to the jury questionnaire and they didn't flag her for one reason or another. Or
right. I mean, the question is not specific to domestic violence.
Maybe she was confused about the question.
Just have you ever, family member or close friend, ever witnessed the commission of or been at the victim of a violent or non-violent drive?
Crime. Sorry, that was typo on my part.
I don't know why I said non-violent crime other than a minor traffic ticket. So it doesn't specifically say domestic violence. So maybe didn't register, or maybe she did, and they just were like, "Hey, she's fine. Everywhere else will be good."
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, Myra, the egg juror.
Yes, she's the juror who was dismissed just prior to the deliberations. Now, the South Carolina Supreme Court has issued an order denying Crosby's request to unseal the records of the hearing which resulted in her disqualification. The order doesn't give any reason why they based the decision, but we know that the state objected based on the fact that there was an ongoing investigation. We don't know because, again, we're not
clear who the investigation is of.
They have not said, but it seems to make sense that it possibly, just speculation, could be the former Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill.
Who has not been charged with anything. She's under ethics probe right now.
Yes, she has a hearing coming up in December. Now, I did speak to my dad briefly about this.
Your dad is an attorney, by the way.
Yes.
It's important to point out, just not your random dad.
Yeah,
he knows his stuff.
He's been on the podcast a couple of times. It is possible that the release of these records could prejudice the person being investigated, is one of the points he brought up. But assuming once this investigation, again, we don't know who the investigation is into, is complete, then we should possibly be able to see those court transcripts. But it's up to the court's discretion.
I just
If they are yeah.
I don't like anything that's secretive. It just gives off a bad smell.
Right,
It doesn't mean there's anything bad, but it just what are you hiding?
It gives the appearance that they're either hiding something or protecting someone.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely the appearance.
And with the Supreme Court justice, there was that article, the current Supreme Court Chief Justice of the South Carolina Supreme Court indicated that he wants to be transparent.
That was one of his big first statements he gave out was it's all about transparency. It's going to be my big thing.
Right. So it assumes that we should be able to FOIA these records in the future.
Yeah, I mean,
We've seen a very limited portion of that transcript, which was attached to one of, I think, of the defense court filings.
It's the part with the main things is what happened in Judge Newman's chambers in camera, and the transcript, if not the video, of Myra's tenants who said that they're claiming in the statement they gave, it says that she talked to them about the case, but they're saying that's not really what happened. We were just tired and we just signed things because we were exhausted.
Again, I've said it multiple times. It seems like it could clear up some confusion. So just before we were sitting down to record, Fitz News drops an article about this whole stuff. And they quote Jim Griffin, Dick Harpootlian in this article, and they question a little bit of why Becky Hill has not been charged with anything up until this point.
And they say Jim Griffin's quote to Fitz is, "There's an obvious reason for the delay. They don't want to take any action that would influence the Supreme Court against her. The stalling tactic," he goes on to say, this is Jim Griffin, "exposes the inherent conflict of Alan Wilson's office overseeing the case. If they were to prosecute and convict Becky Hill, that would be harmful to their efforts to preserve their verdicts against Alec Murdaugh." That's Griffin talking.
So they're saying there's a conflict with the AG's office and Becky Hill, and they have an obvious agenda to want to keep the guilty verdict against Alec Murdaugh preserved.
And so they're saying of course, what Harpootlian and Griffin are saying is that they're delaying it on this Becky Hill because once they charge her with something, then a lot of things are going to be released, that are actually on seal right now. And if they charge her, she's going to maybe testify. You're going to hear stories. You're going to hear things.
Well, and she was also a witness during the evidentiary hearing in front of former Chief Justice Toll.
Right.
And if they say nothing she said was truthful, I don't know how
What does that mean
plays.
for big
I don't
picture?
know. I don't know what that means for the big picture. Just interesting.
Yeah.
And who else did they talk about in this article?
Cousin Eddie Smith. Dick Harpootlian talked about Cousin Eddie. If you've forgotten, Cousin Eddie was Murdaugh's buddy. They think there was some relationship of sort of cousinish type thing. But anyway.
Distant cousins, I believe.
Yeah, distant. But he was Murdaugh's kind of dealer because he was dealing the drugs and check casher. And he's been accused of cashing more than 400 checks totaling $2.4 million at Murdaugh's behest, as it says in Fitz. And so there's all these activities between 2013 and 2021 that Cousin Eddie was cashing checks for Alec, running drugs for Alec, or buying drugs for Alec. And so he's got all these drug trafficking charges that Cousin Eddie Smith is facing, yet he has not been officially sentenced or had a hearing or had a trial on any of this stuff.
I mean, I've heard he is in very poor health, so maybe that is playing a factor into it. But we also have the roadside shooting stuff.
Yes, I didn't even get into that. He's criminally charged in connection with the role in that roadside shooting in September of 2021. I think it was Labor Day. It was a suicide for hire scheme that Alec had going on to get money to Buster Murdaugh. And he I'm sorry, I give him the other Smith. Cousin Eddie Smith was subpoenaed to testify at the trial. Remember, we were all sitting there. Is this the day, Cousin
Every
Eddie?
day,
Is this the day?
every day, I was reaching out to anyone who has, better sources than we do, saying, "Hey, is this the day Eddie Smith's going to come in?"
And I think,
because I wanted to make sure that I was there early and ready.
And I think neither side really
And we were
wanted
splitting,
to.
and I was going to have to arm wrestle you for our press pass. I was like, I'm going to go there on the day Eddie Smith is testifying.
I think both sides thought he was kind of a loose cannon. If they had to put him on
No, his credibility was not good. I think that they just couldn't do it.
And so Harpootlian says, his quote is to Fitz News, all the evidence would indicate Eddie was the source of the millions of dollars in drugs, and he was accused of laundering the money. His crimes were integral to the murders. Why isn't he being prosecuted? I think the Attorney General owes the public an explanation, either schedule the case or drop the charges. That's fair. Cousin Eddie, this guy's had charges over his head for 3 years. Why isn't he seeing...
Well, but he might not care because he's living at home. He's not in jail at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. They revoked his bond and then reinstated the month after the trial, and he's under house arrest and drug testing allegedly. So we don't know yet, but I think everybody would like to hear from Cousin Eddie, and I think it is.
I would make that trip.
Heck yeah, and Cousin Eddie. I even though he is under house arrest, he's not in jail, but 3 years, whatever, like the speedy trial and all that stuff you're supposed to get. And that's a lot of charges.
That's
millions of dollars in checks and a drug connection, which, is seedy.
Yeah. And we get that question a lot from our listeners. What's going on with Eddie? I'm like, well, nothing.
Yeah.
So we also heard from the co-author of Myra Crosby Egger's book, Juror 785, Enough is Enough. And after one of our episodes, kind of wanted to clear up a few things that she said. One, we had questioned whether there was footage of the body cams from the night that her two tenants were interviewed by SLED.
Yeah. So they interview them one night. It's late at night, 10 o'clock, 10:30, something like that. And then the next morning they take them to
They tell them to come to the courthouse and sign affidavits that were...
And they sat there all day.
Right. And there's some controversy about whether the affidavits were actually true to what they told law enforcement.
And were the affidavits literal transcripts of the cam footage? That's the question.
We don't know. But he did confirm that there were transcripts that remain under seal of the two tenants of the interviews they gave to SLED.
Okay.
So we have that. And another question he brought up to me was, why haven't we heard from the bailiff, Mr. Bill? He would be the person who had the most contact with jurors.
That is a good question. If I had to guess, I would think there was some pre-interviews done by somebody, and he had nothing to offer. That would mean
I don't know.
Because why wouldn't Harpootlian or Griffin subpoena him if they thought he had something?
Right.
But I don't know.
Good point. Yeah.
But then again, did they subpoena? Can they subpoena for that evidentiary hearing? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you would think that if they thought he had something,
he would be interviewed. Yes,
right.
I agree. And they also wanted to, but again, I'm interested. Also wanted to clarify the response that Myra gave to Judge Newman when asked if Becky had talked to any of the other jurors, and she responded, no, that I'm not aware of. So she wanted to kind of put that in context. Now, at the time, one thing she says is that the time that she was asked this question, she was the only person that she knew of that was ever called out of the jury room to speak to Clerk Hill.
She went into her actual office, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so she didn't know if Becky Hill was having private conversations with any other jurors. So that's why she responded, no, that's not, not that I'm aware of. But she was not thinking about these communications that Hill had in front of everybody.
Right. Okay. I got you.
Like,
so he asked a question.
Not to believe the defense of Alec Murdaugh or look at his body language or it's a big day. All of those things. That when she was asked that question, she wasn't thinking of that.
She was thinking of private conversation. She's like, I don't know if anybody else was called in the office.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
And also, at the time that she had this meeting with Judge Newman, it was before the visit to Moselle. And at the visit to Moselle, she had seen Becky Hill go off with the foreperson of the jury.
So that would have been a private conversation.
That would have been a
But
private.
the question was before she saw that.
Right, before. And so she thinks that she misunderstood this question, and that if she understood the entire context, she would have said yes.
That's a fair answer. I think we've said this before, and I am not taking sides, but I'm saying if you are called into the judge's chambers, you're worried about your ex, as we know, she thought might be stalking her or something. You got all these, you got Harpootlian and Griffin and, Waters and all these people in there, and it's just you and the judge, and it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
When you ask a question, there's a lot going on in your head, and then you ask questions. It's not like you have time to think about the answers. It's just like,
you're not fully understanding what's going on. You're like, what the heck was my ex-husband saying? I have
there's a lot. Your head's swimming.
Restraining, or you're swimming.
Because she was worried that he was even in the courtroom.
And another a friend asked me this question, like, what did you think of Aimee versus Myra interviewing them? Who did you find to be more truthful? I was like, I think they were both speaking their truths.
Absolutely. I thought both were believing what they said, and I believed that they believed what they said.
Right.
I don't think they're making things up.
No.
Now, memory's a crazy thing. It does tricks on you at times, and I just don't believe that either are making things up for some sort of agenda.
No, and there's been a lot of blowback about Myra writing her book, saying that she was in it for fame and fortune and money. I think that she really legit just wants to clear her name.
Because she's not getting a lot of that.
No, it's a self-published book on Amazon. How much are you?
And the fame you're getting is not a lot positive.
No. I think she legit, and I think that is her reasoning that she would like to get.
Let everybody see what happened. And she can't talk about it. But if it's released, she feels she'll be vindicated.
Right.
And we won't know till we see it.
We won't know.
But if she's strongly wanting that released, she at least believes that she'll be vindicated, or she would say, like, keep it sealed,
Well, I mean, people also have different perceptions of what they think happened versus my husband and I have this all the time.
I hear you. And we have a comment?
Yeah, so this was just such a cool comment from one of our former guests, Nancy Joe. She's an attorney in the upstate of South Carolina.
Gotcha. Okay, so she sent a message. My husband and I were recently in a small pub in Montreal. There were very few people in the place, and I was talking to the bartender across the room from our table. Another couple came in, and we had on Gamecock gear, University of South Carolina, and we started talking. The husband said, the only thing I know about South Carolina is about the Low Country because of the Alec Murdaugh trial. We started laughing. He also had a southern drawl. Turns out they're from Tennessee. Faithful listener of Impact of Influence. He said he remembered my voice from the episode during which you interviewed me about juror conduct. Small world, and never know how you might connect to someone. Today's episode with Miss Williams, that's Aimee Williams, the juror. Very interesting. Thanks for continuing to bring us updated info. Thank you.
I know, I love that comment.
It is really cool. There you go. If you want to reach out to us, it's Impact of Influence on Facebook page, the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, part of the Evergreen Podcast Company. And we'll talk soon, friend.